With tensions high in the Middle East, Canada is now urging citizens to avoid all travel to both Israel and Iran. Travel expert Claire Newell joins us with more. Claire, what exactly is the Canadian government advising?
Well, to avoid all travel is the highest level of warning, and no surprise that that is the case. And at this stage of the game, the Canadian government is interested in really helping any Canadian citizens that want to get out of the area. There is no consular services or embassy in Iran. There hasn't been since 2012. So they have set up at borders outside of Iran, places like the Turkish-Iran border. So, but it's difficult. It's a war zone. So terrible traffic and lack of gas. In Israel, after the ceasefire was announced, there was set up buses from Tel Aviv to Aqaba, Jordan, and then a charter flight going from Aqaba, Jordan to Greece. There wasn't a lot of uptick on that. I would say that it is very important if you have people in Israel or Iran that they should register on the Canadian government's website, travel.gc.ca. Not too late to do that, but they need to do that so that the government knows exactly where they are and, of course, avoid all travel at this time.
All right. Meantime, perhaps not a surprise with travel to the U.S. down significantly, but apparently the staycation is making a comeback this summer with Canadians. We were talking about this on the show briefly yesterday. Give us some more details if you could here, Claire. What's behind this?
Yeah, no question. The staycation is it this year. Lots of different reasons. We know, of course, that tariffs, the cost of travel and currency are some key factors as well. So there was a big boost. We talked about this last week. As of last Friday, the Canada Strong Pass is going to really encourage. It's an incentive because it offers discounts and in some cases free travel. Or free access to museums and parks and things. So that's going to be a big coup. A lot of people taking advantage of that. We talked about over-tourism last week on the segment, not last year. Of course, it was in play last year, but the protests are starting to escalate. And we did talk about that. So a lot of people looking to travel here in Canada instead. And there's a lot to see. And on that topic of over-tourism, I would suggest people go off the beaten path a little bit more. Go to those lesser-known destinations. They're going to get better prices and less crowds here in Canada as well.
Speaking of last week, we were talking about this on the show last week, a report from Canada's Competition Bureau. And now Air Canada is rejecting this report, a report that calls for more competition and foreign ownership in our airline industry. So what exactly is Air Canada saying, Claire?
So Air Canada came out with their own report, and there were some myths that they kind of wanted to bust. And the first myth was Canada lacks competition in domestic air travel. And what they're saying is that 90% of Canadians travel on routes that have multiple airlines, and that is higher than in many countries. The second myth was that small carriers can't succeed. And what they're saying is that ultra low cost carriers and smaller carriers have actually done well. Between 2019 and 2024, we've seen Flair and Porter. And what they said was that they have increased capacity by 256%. I tend to agree with that. They were really not known not large pre-COVID. And that airlines are continuously rising in price, airfares. That was myth 3. And what they're saying is that if you factor in inflation, that fares have actually come down. When you think about it, 20 years ago, it was about $500 in some cases to travel between, say, Vancouver and Toronto. And that's actually the case now. You can find fares for that. What they're saying is that the real hurdles are based on what government is doing, infrastructure costs, where they come into play, and regulation, not the lack of competition. So no other airlines have come to the table saying this, that they agree with Air Canada. We'll see what WestJet has to say.
Yeah, an interesting response, though, nonetheless. Finally, want to ask you about this, because more and more travelers say they are experiencing swipe and run smartphone theft while they're away. And you've also got some tips for us when it comes to traveling smart with your smartphone?
Yeah, there was a recent survey about this. It's kind of unnerving that almost 20% of travelers say that they have smartphone snatching or loss of another kind when they're traveling on an international trip. Now, to avoid your phone being snatched, and this is happening in broad daylight and just being grabbed when you're on the street, is the most important thing that you can do is actually use it indoors in safe surroundings. But to mitigate the loss, if your phone is actually taken from you, there are some other pieces of advice, and keeping the phone hidden when you're using it and you're in public, using Face ID, fingerprint, or a complex password, using Find My Device and remote erase features, as well as the ability to lock your SIM card. So all really important when you are traveling to remember these types of things.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Claire.
Thanks so much.